This is a drone tour of the sites known as Land East of Basingstoke and Lodge Farm, sites SS3.6 and SS3.7. By way of orientation, this is the map of the sites from page 145 of the EPH Agenda Pack. We shall show how there are problems at every compass point. In brief, at the north end of the site we have just one point of access for the vehicles associated with the proposed 1,500 houses. At the northeast of the site we have not only the odorous sewage works, but also the noisy and polluting incinerator. At the east of the site we have a major flood risk from the presence of the River Loddon. At the south of the site we have a bus access point onto the tight roads of Old Basing. On the west/southwest of the site we have two issues: the presence of the Old Basing Conservation Zone and a large scheduled monument. It is at this location where we're going to start our drone footage. So here we are at the southwest part of the site. The housing you can see is from the villages of Old Basing and Litchpit. Some is included in the conservation zone. At the bottom left of your screen you can now see a thatched house. It is listed. It is hard to see how 1,500 houses, that's half the size of Old Basing and Litchpit, would not adversely impact on the conservation zone. Indeed, a recent application to build 9 houses along this boundary was declined by the inspector as they said it would negatively impact on the rural feel of this conservation zone. Now, underneath the hedgerow in front of you and also coming onto your screen on the right is the Pirates Hill entrenchment. This is a large scheduled monument running up the western boundary. We also have a Roman road running across the site and probably a villa. Excavating these sites for housing carries real risks of damaging them. The National Planning Framework says developing such areas should happen in only wholly exceptional cases. We're going to move to the north of the site now. This is where we find the only point of car access for the proposed housing. The constrained nature of the roads everywhere else means there's no other options. Based on the borough's average number of cars per household, it is anticipated that this single point of access would serve 2,500 vehicles. What happens when there is an accident or a breakdown at this point? We are now in the vicinity of the proposed access point, just north of the listed toll house. As we can see, this road, the A33, is already busy. Here at the north end of the site we can see other important site constraints, namely the sewage works and the incinerator. Both were originally placed here to be away from housing because of odour and noise issues. The silver buildings you can see are the incinerator. Any housing will be subject to significant noise from lorries with metal containers coming back and forth to dump their waste. It processes waste from Basingstoke and further afield. It is also worth thinking about potential health risks from the incinerator's emissions. This may just be a lawsuit waiting to happen. Now here we are hovering above the sewage works. We can see the sheer size of this site. Look how it dwarfs the lorries below. Any housing would be subject to significant odour. Any proposed mitigation strategies cannot control for the vagaries of wind direction. Thames Water tell us they fear being inundated with complaints. As we leave the sewage works, it's worth reflecting how these sites are greenfield ones, situated in open countryside. Developing them would be contrary to the borough's current planning framework. What we're seeing on the left of the screen, on the western boundary of the site, under hedgerows, is the River Loddon, a rare chalk stream. There's also Petty's Brook, a site of nature conservation, towards the northern part of the site. Creating a large urban extension immediately next to them conflicts with the National Planning Policy Framework, which is about protecting and enhancing biodiversity, not threatening it. Coming onto your screen now to the right, you're going to see Lodge Farm. It contains 2 listed buildings. Their rural setting will be destroyed by situating an urban centre around them as proposed. It's important to also think about topography at this point. The sites have a prominent position here, with views over the rural Loddon Valley. It will not be possible to thus screen the development. Remember, the developers are suggesting 2.5 to 3-storey buildings here. We are now on the western side of the site. There is Lodge Farm. We're going to turn north. You are starting to see parts of the River Loddon at the bottom of your screen. The Environment Agency rejected this area being developed due to its high flood risk. As our climate changes and extremes become the norm, this represents an important site constraint. The planning inspector did not believe this could be readily mitigated against.